I used to believe life was a story carefully written, with every chapter leading to something meaningful. I thought my story was going to be a happy one, filled with love, adventure, and all the beautiful things life could offer. I never imagined how quickly that story could change. It all started on a cold winter morning. I remember sitting on my favorite bench in the park, sketching in my notebook. Snowflakes were falling around me, covering the world in a blanket of white. The air was crisp, and my fingers were freezing, but I didn't care. Drawing always helped me clear my mind. I was lost in my sketch when I heard a voice. "That's really good," someone said. I looked up and saw him standing there, tall guy with messy brown hair and warm eyes. He was holding a cup of coffee, the steam curling into the cold air. His smile was kind, almost familiar, like we'd known each other forever. "Oh, thanks," I said, feeling a little awkward. He didn't seem to mind. He sat down next to me without hesitation. "I'm Ethan. Do you always draw in the snow?" I laughed softly. "Only when I need to clear my head." He smiled again, and that was it. That's how it all began, how one random encounter turned into the greatest chapter of my life. We started seeing each other everywhere after that. At the park, the coffee shop down the street, even the little bookstore I loved. At first it felt like a coincidence, but after a while, we both knew we were making excuses to be in the same place. He was everything I didn't know I needed. He was studying architecture and loved to talk about buildings and designs. I was an artist, more interested in colors and feelings than straight lines and structure. But somehow, we fit perfectly. We'd spend hours talking about our dreams, our childhoods, our favorite books and songs. He made me laugh more than anyone ever had. And when I was with him, the world felt lighter. Like all the worries and doubts that had weighed me down didn't matter anymore. One night, after months of late-night talks and long walks, he held my hand for the first time. We were walking through the park again, just like the day we met. He stopped under a street lamp, his breath visible in the cold air. "Emily," he said, his voice soft, "I don't think I've ever met anyone like you." My heart was racing, but I smiled. "I feel the same way." Then he kissed me slow, gentle, and perfect. It felt like something out of a dream. The next 2 years were like living in that dream. Ethan and I moved into a tiny apartment together, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We decorated it with fairy lights and filled it with art and plants. He'd stay up late working on his designs while I painted beside him. Sometimes we'd fall asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, our heads resting on each other's shoulders. On weekends, we'd cook breakfast together, dancing around the kitchen to old songs on the radio. Life wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. We talked about everything: our plans, our future. We were going to travel to Italy, visit all the art museums, and eat way too much pasta. We'd get a dog, maybe a golden retriever, and name him Max. And one day, we'd build a house by the sea. "I'll design the house," Ethan said one night, running his fingers through my hair. "And you'll fill it with your paintings." "Deal," I whispered, smiling at him. I thought we had all the time in the world, but life doesn't always give you time. It happened on a rainy evening. Ethan had stayed late at work, finishing a big project. I was at home waiting for him. I had made his favorite dinner pasta with garlic bread and lit a few candles to make the apartment feel cozy. He was supposed to be home by 7. By 8, I started to worry. By 9, my phone rang. I still remember that moment so clearly. The way my heart stopped when I saw the number on the screen. The voice on the other end, calm, almost too calm, telling me there had been an accident. A car crash on the highway. Ethan didn't make it. I don't remember much after that. Everything blurred together, people talking to me, holding my hands, telling me how sorry they were. I just kept thinking it couldn't be real. He was supposed to come home. We were supposed to have dinner, sit on the couch, and talk about our day. He was supposed to be here. The apartment felt so empty without him. The silence was deafening. His clothes were still hanging in the closet. His favorite mug sat on the kitchen counter. Everywhere I looked, I saw him. For weeks, I barely left the house. I stopped painting. I stopped answering my phone. I just sat in our living room, staring at the front door, waiting for him to walk in. I kept thinking if I just waited long enough, he'd come back, but he didn't. It took months, no. It took everything in me to start living again. It wasn't like I woke up one day and felt better. It was slow, painfully slow. One day, I picked up my sketchbook again. At first, it felt strange, like I'd forgotten how to draw, but I kept going. Little by little, the lines started to make sense again. I started walking to the park again, sitting on that same bench where we first met. I painted the places we had dreamed of visiting together, D'Italy, the lavender fields in France, the little house by the sea. I wrote him letters, silly letters, serious ones, letters he'd never read. It made me feel close to him, like he was still here somehow. I still miss him every day. There are moments, quiet ones, usually when I can almost hear his voice or feel his hand in mine. Sometimes I close my eyes and pretend he's standing right beside me, smiling that warm, familiar smile. But I've learned that grief is just another form of love. It's the love you can't give to the person anymore, so it stays with you. It hurts, but it also reminds you of how lucky you were to have that love at all. Ethan was my greatest chapter. And even though our story ended too soon, I'll carry him with me for the rest of my life. He was my beginning, my middle, and in some ways, he'll always be my forever. And maybe, just maybe, in another life, we'll meet again.